Hi.
Okay, so here we go. So this is a conversation of, are you safer at home? Secrets of violence and abuse. I've got some feedback on my end. Hopefully, I don't know what that is about. You have the feedback as well, everyone?
We can hear you.
Okay, I'm gonna have to figure out how to minimize this.
If everybody goes on mute, everybody goes on mute.
All right, so let's do this. I'm gonna come out of this. Let's see. Actually, is everyone on mute? Looks like it. Okay, good, thank you. So, I am Candy Lewis, Executive Director of Positive Results Corporation, and today we are presenting on Are You Safer at Home? Secrets of Violence and Abuse. Positive Results is a nonprofit located in Los Angeles, California, actually in Gardena, and our mission addresses trauma from a cultural and age perspective, creating awareness about teen dating, violence, interpersonal violence, sexual assault, and bullying. And today I'm very excited to have some amazing guests here to talk about this. But before we go further, I want to just cover, okay, my screen is going on its own. So I want to cover our disclosures, that this conversation might be triggering, that we will be talking about actual cases of domestic violence and sexual assault. And in the event you need to talk to someone, you can email us at the information on the screen or text us after this presentation or during, and we'll see if we can't get someone to talk to you immediately, because we understand that this conversation may be triggering to you. So our learning objectives today are to understand what domestic violence is. I'm going to need everyone to go on mute, please. What the signs and triggers are, historical trauma, why did a victim stay, and why did the abuser abuse? Are people safer at home? Prevention, safety planning, and what the resources are. And so we have some amazing guest speakers today. Let me introduce them. Ms. Abigail Guzman, and she's a graduating senior. She's going to be joining us in a little bit. She's from Teen Line. Then we have Ms. Alejandra Gomez. Ms. Alejandra, are you on the line? Please jump in and say hello.
Hi everyone, I'm Alejandra. I am at the case manager at the New Star Family Justice Center, a domestic violence agency. And thank you, Candy, for inviting us and for hosting this meeting.
Thank you so very much. Next, we have Ms. Adrienne N. Spears. And Ms. Adrienne, jump on the line and introduce yourself, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Adrienne Spears. I am a project coordinator with California Coalition Against Sexual Assault. And I'll be speaking from a professional standpoint as well as being a survivors of domestic violence.
Thank you so much. Are you guys seeing that the names of the speakers on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. No? Yes. No. Okay, let me see what's going on. Give me 1 second. Let's see if we come out of here. Do you see it now, Adrienne? No. Okay. I am going to do this. Give me 1 second. Let's do stop that. Share screen. Okay, how about now? Okay, awesome. You know, technology is extra special, so my apologies. Thank you very much, Adrian. I appreciate you for joining in and introducing yourself. Next, we have Miss Bernita Walker. Miss Walker, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. As you already know, my name is Bernita Walker. And I don't know what else you wanted me to say except hello. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Miss Bernita. And then last but not least, we have Miss Kelly Dillon, and she is on the line. So Miss Kelly, please join us.
Oh, I'm sorry, Candy. I was waiting for you to mute me. Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Dillon. I am the program director for the Positive Results Center. I'm also the executive director of Back to the Basics. And I'm here to talk about the intersectionality of community violence and domestic violence.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. So today we're going to be talking about violence and abuse. And I really just wanted to start the conversation off with what is violence and abuse? And this is the definition according to the Department of Justice. And you can all read this for yourself. But the first one is that it's really for the purpose of exploitation. And then second, when we start talking about the actual forms of violence, there's the physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, there's the economic or financial, and sexual. But some people never think about the medical, the spiritual threats that are coming from people. And we're going to talk more about this, all of this later with our experts. So this is really looking at the force, the coercion, and the abuse of power. And we're going to start with Miss Bernita Walker. Miss Bernita Walker, can you talk about the cracks in the wall, please?
Gladly. You see there, the rest of that says how misaligned foundations destroy the fabric of your family and disrupt the joy of your existence. Imagine, and I received this story from actually Dr. Tony Evans. Some of you may be familiar with him. He had a crack in his wall and he wanted to get it fixed. So he contacted a person that said that they could do it. And the guy came in and he looked at it, said, yeah, I can do it. And he did it. Well, several weeks later, the crack came back. So Dr. Evans didn't call that gentleman back. He called somebody else. And when they came in, they looked at it. They looked at it. They looked all around the room, the floor and everything. And then he said to him, I can fix it, but it's not going to stay fixed. And he said, what do you mean? He said, it's not the cracks that you're having in the wall, it's that your foundation is not right. And that's one of the problems that we have as women. I know there's a man on here or two men, I saw their names. But we have that situation for us because the foundation is cracked. And looking at domestic violence, there's a movie that I use in my 40-hour training. It's a documentary called Violence, an American Tradition. And in it, it says in order for us to get the violence out of the United States, that what we have to do is change the focus of the men, because they are the ones really that have the responsibility of keeping that on the foundation solid. I want to ask a question. May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to ask a question. I really want you guys to answer as well. What is love? What do you consider love?
Can you all put in the chat box, what do you consider love?
Okay, and while you're thinking about that one, when do you feel loved?
Those are good questions.
And the reason why I'm asking these questions is because all of society, in my opinion, we have a false understanding of what love is. I'm talking about the means. I'm not talking about the extremes. We have a false understanding of what love means. How do we get involved? And there I go in my teaching. How do we get involved in relationships? We get involved by what looks good, smells good, sounds good, feels good, and tastes good. And that's our five senses. We don't know about these individuals that we get involved with. We don't know about their foundation. We're only looking at what they look like, what they smell like, what they sound like, what they feel like, and what they taste like. And that does not give us a firm foundation. So we have cracks. Are you aware that 70% of all Black children are out of wedlock? 70% of all Black children are out of wedlock. So we're looking for love in all the wrong ways. We're not doing what we're supposed to do as far as relationships and getting pregnant and having children. We don't love ourselves is what I'm seeing. I know I've got a whole lot that's going to be coming back at me, but that's okay. We don't love ourselves. Because if you loved yourself, you would not allow yourself to get into these situations. I'm speaking from experience. I'm not talking about anybody but myself. I've been there. I've been there. At 14, I was exposed to my first domestic violence incident. Young man, 15 years old, put knives to my throat, guns to my head to keep me from talking to kids I had been with since elementary school. I had just met him. That's how early it starts. And then my second bad experience was when I was 28 years old. The young man was 29. He was a LAPD officer and I was a deputy sheriff for the county of Los Angeles. And again, I was looking for love in all the wrong ways and all the wrong places because I didn't know any better. I was not taught any better because nobody knew to teach me any better, because in my home where I was born and where I was raised, we didn't have domestic violence. My father, I heard my mother and father, no, I heard my mother fuss one time at my father, one time. And that was because he lost all the money. He was a gambler. He used to love to gamble. He was a musician and he loved to gamble. And he lost all the money. So when he did that, my mother was fussing at him. She never called him out of his name. She called him his name. Never called him out of his name. His mother heard it. She came in from the back. And then my brother came home and he heard it. You know, so I was just sitting there watching them. But there was nothing out of place. There was no negative words, no cursing, none of that. So I wasn't raised with it. So when I was exposed to it, it was really a shock to me. And I know others need to talk, but I just wanted to put that in your mind. I see someone says, love is unconditional support of someone else, coupled with honesty and genuine feedback. Okay. Someone has written, to open our hearts more fully to love's power and grace, we must dare to acknowledge how, wait a minute, it went. I have to go back up. We must dare to acknowledge how little we know of love in both theory and practice. Bell Hooks. Thank you very much. We're going to get a chance to read these other ones though. Okay, so I just want to put those things on your mind, because when we talk about being safe at home, are you really being safe at home with the people that you're with? But remember, you got there by looking for love all the wrong ways and in all the wrong places. So I will be quiet. Is that enough introduction? Because you know I can keep going.
Yes, ma'am. That's a great introduction. Can you talk a little bit about how we came to today with domestic violence as opposed to how it was in the past, let's say prior to O.J. Simpson, which changed everything?
Well, okay. Actually, it has been the same since the beginning. You know, domestic violence has been here since the beginning of time. It's nothing new. And because we did not follow the rules that we were given as far as the universe is concerned, we're out of whack. That's what I talked about, the foundation. So as we move forward, we have to retrain ourselves. Let me give you a quick example. I know everybody's been on the airplane. Well, I believe everybody's been on the airplane. And when they give you your emergency directions, what do they tell you to do when the mask falls down?
You have to put it on.
They tell you to put it on you first. Put it on you first. not your child, not the person sitting next to you, your mama, your father, whoever. Put it on you first. Because if you're not saving yourself, you can't help anybody else. And that's what we have to remember. This domestic violence coming up, we've always tried, as women in particular, we've always tried to save the male, save our partner. We can't save them. Only they can save themselves. So that's one of the things that we need to understand. I don't care what you do. If you're in a violent relationship, you cannot help the person that you're in that relationship with, because it's not going to be received. As far as they're concerned, you're part of the problem.
Thank you so much. Now, I know a couple of people had their hand up. Miss Andrea Peruta, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Would you unmute yourself and feel free to share?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, trying to turn on the camera so I can connect. Okay. So hi, my name is Andrea. So I wanted to share with you kind of a little story. So my sister was dating this guy. My mom was a little concerned about it. We come from a domestic violence home. So I had to go to therapy in order to love myself, and I feel like I healed myself. So my mom was sharing like, oh, my sister Victoria, she's like, oh, she's dating this guy. I don't like the way she's treating her, blah, blah, blah. So I talked to my mom. I'm like, okay, first of all, she doesn't know better because she was exposed. I don't want to kind of blame my mom, but I'm like, hey, mom, why doesn't she want this guy that treats her right and is choosing this guy that it's not treating her right? And she's like, well, because she doesn't know better. I'm like, she was exposed to that way of being treated since she was a younger girl. Why? Because those are the things that we will see when we were growing up. And then she kind of was reflecting. So when Bernita was talking about the foundation, so I kind of identified, I'm like, that was the foundation that we had as younger girls. So now that we're getting older, that's what we know. And it kind of, it's a healing process that you have to go on your own in order to know better. So now, for example, myself, like now that I have my boyfriend, like he treats me like a queen. And it's like, whoa, like I was never exposed to this at home. So I kind of like share with my family and with my mom, like this is the way we were supposed to be treated as younger.
Absolutely, that's right.
Excellent.
We live as we learn, and we learn as we live.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Andriana, your boyfriend, have you met his family?
Yes, I met his family, and I study child development with a focus in family and counseling. So I'm always kind of like looking at those things and just the interaction between the mom, the sisters. My family, we don't have that at home. So when I go to the mom's house, like, or she texted me, my mother-in-law, she's like, hey, how are you? And sometimes to me, it's like, why is she asking me how am I doing? But I had to kind of change my mentality, like, oh, they do care about me and what I'm going through. So, yeah.
You said something, you said your mother-in-law.
Yes.
Okay, so are you married?
No, we're dating, but okay. I see like long-term plans with this person because that's the way he makes me feel. And then that's the way I feel about the relationship.
How long have you been with him? I know I got to get you off of this, but how long have I got to get me off of this? So how long have you been with him?
For 8 months.
Okay, be cautious.
Yeah, and kind of going back on that because I experienced toxic relationships prior to this. So I was in a toxic relationship for like a couple of them. So now to me, this is like everything is new, and I see a different perspective. I see that you could be treated differently and that there's better for us women out there.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you, Ms. Bernita.
You're welcome.
So we know that violence and abuse begins in the womb. And you say why? Because we tell every woman to talk to her baby and sing to her baby, but the same voice that hears her singing also hears her crying and feels the violence. And so I'm wondering if our next guest, if our next guest, Miss Abigail, are you on the line, Miss Abigail?
I am.
Awesome. Could you please introduce yourself, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Teen Line is something I'm super passionate about, so I'm happy that I can share maybe some information with you guys. But my name's Abigail. I'm a listener at Teen Line. I've been there for 2 years now. And Teen Line is essentially just a crisis hotline for teens, where teens all over the world can call or text in or email about any issues they may be having. And we're really there to support and talk to them. So.
Awesome. And you're still in high school, right?
I am. I'm a high school senior.
Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's move right on and go ahead and talk to us about the slide.
Sure. Well, these are just are some statistics for Teen Line over the years. And I think this was collective of last year. So you can see most of the problems that we receive on the line have to do with relationships or depression, anxiety. But I think I was here mainly to focus on the huge increase in child abuse that we have seen since quarantine and since COVID-19. Actually, it's very shocking how much of an increase we've seen in child abuse. It's about 110% increase, I think. So yeah, I just wanted to really touch upon that because I think it's not something that I saw super often, but now I know volunteering and getting on the text lines now, it's a huge problem on the line that we get almost every night. So I just wanted to raise more awareness of that and how it's really increasing during this time.
So can you elaborate a little bit on what you're seeing? How is it showing up and who's calling?
Yeah, well, firstly, there are so many, there's a wide range of teens calling and texting now specifically because we can't answer the phone since all of the teens are working at home. But I've talked to kids as young as 12 all the way to around 19 or 20-year-olds. And this problem, or the problem of child abuse, has really risen during this time. And it's not something, obviously, that's really easy to talk about among teenagers. And it's really hard to build that trust at first. But I think the biggest warning factor for a child abuse case or a relationship abuse case is just, it seems like everything seems to be going really well. I know a particular example that I encountered was I was talking, we have resource assistants to help us, so usually graduate students that are there working with us to help us if we ever need help. And I remember talking to someone who seemed like school was going all right, her personal relationships were going okay, she didn't seem to be behind or anything. But then I asked her about her family life, and she said, oh, it's okay. And I just felt really stuck. I didn't know how to help her. But the RA suggested that I say, oh, she said, okay, maybe ask her just okay. And I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, things seem to be going well, but you said your family life is just okay. What do you think, what's going on? Do you think something could be better? And that's really when she opened up, and it was this really intense and long text about how she was being abused at her home. And it was really shocking to me that I could have missed something like that. But then I remembered how difficult it is for so many teenagers, especially, and young kids, to talk about the abuse at their homes, because it's usually done by people that they really trust and people they've grown up with. So just looking for small warning signs if they seem more like shy or timid. And we are mandated to report those. So just talking to them, establishing trust, and then just talking about the process with them and how like reporting goes, and that they do deserve a lot of help and support during that time.
Thank you. That is such great information, because I don't think most people know. I should say a lot of, I know maybe providers know, but I don't think a lot of families know about the resources that you bring. And so you did mention text, and your information is at the end of this presentation, but I'm wondering if you would please put in the chat box your text number and also the call line. So that way people will be able to get that information and share it right now. And I'm not sure if you were on the line, but this is also going to be recorded. It is recorded, and it's also on Facebook Live. So people will be able to get this information. So one last thing. I know it's difficult talking to kids and building that trust, but if there's any one thing that you could share with anyone, what would that be? Especially on how to engage with someone.
How to engage with someone, like a younger audience or a younger age group?
Yes.
Sure. I think just especially coming off as non-intimidating, just really friendly. I think coming out of training, it's really extensive training for Teen Line. You're really knowledgeable about all of these different topics. But then as soon as I came into the hotline, I really remembered that I'm talking to teens, and the main reason they're coming to calling a Teen Line and talking to teens specifically is because they don't want to feel judged, or they don't want to feel lesser than. So just talking to them casually, not making it a huge deal, and just like showing them that you genuinely care, but not in a way that puts them down. So just being really friendly and making yourself open to whatever they have to say, even if it does seem like a small problem, just reassuring them that everything is valid, and that you're there to listen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just want to add one little thing, is that when you're talking to children and young adults, please don't make it about you. Please don't also talk about, well, when I was young, it didn't happen to me that way, or I don't understand why you're still dealing with it, because everyone has feelings, and everyone's truth is their truth, and you can't deny what their truth is. So just be patient and listen. And one thing I always love to tell people, especially adults, fix your face. Fix your face so that you aren't looking at them like, what? Because all of these facial expressions tell a story. And when you're talking to young adults, they're looking at your face. They're trying to see how you're receiving this information. And this can stop them from having an engaging conversation with you. Thank you so much, Abigail.
Of course. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So we are going to move on, but I know one person has had their hand up for a minute, and that is Miss Annette Diaz. Are you on the line still?
I am on the line.
Okay.
Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it. I am a product of domestic violence and also sexual abuse as well. And the young lady, Abigail, I commend you. Thank you so much, because we definitely need a lot of people to go out in the communities, because a lot of people don't know where to go. They don't even know what to talk, how to approach the situation. Also in the spiritual side too, I've been you did say this is going to be very emotional.
Yes.
Been dealing with it on a spiritual side as well. But we have, I'm on the forefront in the business that I do, and I hear a lot of information. I do have a book that comes from the County of Los Angeles that I pass to my families. and let them know that there are resources out here to help you. You know, knowledge is powerful, and we have to put the word out there to let the children know, and also adults, and also the young women. I was one of those young women who didn't have a father in the home, and having a dad in the home, it does make a difference when you have that right dad in the home, because you have the structure, because that's the foundation. When unfortunately I didn't have that. I had a dad, but he never played the dad role in my life. A lot of things that I had to go through in my life that I had to deal with on my own, because no one taught me. We had men in our family. They didn't teach us. We had to learn on our own. I'll be 59 next month. And there's some things that I still had to deal with. I had to learn on my own. But by the grace of God, I thank God that I know him for who he is and the foundation that he had instilled in me, that I'm able to stand and share my testimony with other women. And I agree with you. We cannot judge other people what they go through, because they have their own situation that they go through. Everybody is not the same. We all experience things on a different level. So we have to be patient with one another, and we have to be compassionate with one another. I didn't mean to get emotional, but this is something that the churches don't even talk about.
Right.
The churches don't even talk about this. And I thank God for this platform that you have, that we could do this on a constant basis, that somebody can get healed from what you're sharing. And I really appreciate for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bernita, did you want to say something?
Of course. We have a movement in the County of Los Angeles of getting to pastors in particular, and getting to the churches, trying to get them to understand their first responsibility is to teach the men how to be men according to God's word.
Yes.
Okay, that's their first responsibility. And loving the Lord the way we're supposed to, and loving ourselves according to what, all of that. So we're working on that, sweetheart. I understand exactly what you say. It's hard to get into the pastors, the priests. They're doing a little better now. I do a faith training for the faith community, as well as I put that into my 40-hour training as well, because of the fact that if they don't teach it, we can't learn it.
Absolutely.
Okay? If they don't teach it, we can't learn it. So
I just want to
thank you
say
for letting me put that in.
as well, Miss Bernita. Hi, Miss Bernita. This is Kelly Dillon.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, peace and blessings be upon you.
Same to you, my sister.
So also I just want to say, as we talk about, domestic violence, and I know we kind of go into a few things about male privilege. So when we go into the area of religion and DV and how that plays a part, understanding that most of the time in most different religions and different types of religion, the doctrine of that religion is taught from a male perspective.
Right.
And there's somehow or another the responsibility of the household and the peace upon the household somehow falls upon the woman, or that the woman is not doing something right, because the Bible speaks about a contentious woman, or a woman that does this, and I would rather live on a rooftop in order to be in the house with a woman that's nagging. But it fails to mention an abusive man, or it fails to mention things that men, that or how women felt in during time. So I just want to say that, we do have to go back to a place of teaching men and also women, who they are, why they were created, and also, like you say, that golden and guiding principle of love one another as you will love yourself. You know what I'm saying? So like you say, as we begin to teach those things, definitely having to speak up on that. And even though I know we're talking about, and we're going to move on, but even though we're talking about DV and, some more from a survivor's perspective, but also I've taught, and I think Bernie and a few of us here have taught domestic violence to education, to actual offenders of domestic violence. And so also going back to the fact that addressing their victimization before they actually commit the offense as well, and dealing with why they abandoned their family, why they're not in a home, how they are how they are to address their manhood or different things like that, as well as looking who they are through a spiritual lens as well. So there's a lot of, so let me just say this, it's a lot of healing that has to be done as we come together, and also especially in communities of color. There's so much brokenness because of different things that have happened as well in our religion. And a lot of people, like you say, the pastors and the ministers don't talk about that. And I just want to say that for me, that was one of the main issues in which when I was going through my domestic violence, I was crying out to the God in which I believe in. And I was saying, Lord, where are you? Why I'm going through this. So not only was my home broken, but there was a brokenness in my relationship that becomes a setup for my demise and falling into all various forms of depression. So I just wanted to touch on that as we move forward.
Thank you, Kelly. So there's, I have our office manager, the lovely Jennifer Smith, who's going to help and support this conversation. She's going to read a question, but before we do that, Annette, thank you so much for sharing your truth and being so transparent. We appreciate you, and we're thankful that you have survived and that you are on the forefront. Also want to let you all know that there are resources that we will be sharing at the end of this presentation. I always like to do things authentic, so this conversation may take some twists and turns because we want to hear from you. We are going to have a series every single week, and as a matter of fact, next Thursday, we're going to have the same conversation with the men. So I think it's important that we bring boys and men into this conversation, and we'll talk more about that. But Jennifer, can you go ahead and read that question, please?
Sure. The question says, would women pastors be able to talk about domestic violence in the churches?
Ms. Bernita, why don't you cover that question?
Okay, yes, they should be. I don't know what setup you're looking at. You have women pastors that also talk about it, and I remember Luida Grady Johnson, she's gone through it as well. And Yolanda, I can't think of her name, the singer, the last name, I can't think of her last name. Yolanda Adams, she's been abused, and she shared that at one of the conferences. So we have a part in everything, and we need to stand up and make that known. We find that a number of the pastors don't want to deal with it because of issues that they don't want to handle because they don't know. They're not trained. That's the biggest problem. They're not trained. I saw someone that said that they were a minister, a female minister that's in the chat box, but they're not trained. And you said something, Kelly, that let me need to say something else. We're not talking about just Christianity. We're talking about Islam. We're talking about Judaism. We're talking about every religion that there is. The woman has been taken a back seat, which is okay if we're loved the way it was meant to be in the first place. Right. You see, then things we wouldn't be so out of sorts. Our foundation would not be broken like it is.
Amen. That's the truth. Wow, this conversation is great. I am so thankful that we have such amazing people on the line that can give great insight, as well as you, our guests, that are giving us feedback. So we're going to move ahead, and I want to bring into the conversation Miss Adrienne Spires. Are you on the line? I know Adrienne was having some problems earlier. Well, this is, I've got this little screen here. So this is the impact of domestic violence worldwide and nationally because of COVID-19. As you can see, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, I think, delivered a public statement calling on governments to put women's safety first as they respond to this pandemic. And in France, domestic violence increased about 30%, or the calls. Spain, 18%. Singapore, they received 30% more calls. And we're seeing about 35% increase in the United States. And 50% of domestic violence cases have gone unreported. And I really believe that that number is so much higher because we have no idea. And Adrian is joining us now. We really have no idea to the magnitude of how great domestic violence is. Adrian, are you with us now?
I am. I'm so sorry. I'm having technology problems of all days.
Of all days, it happens. It's okay. We love you and we're glad you're here.
Thanks. So I'm just going to jump in and talk about, as everyone has stated previously, about domestic violence and the increase. I don't think it's an increase. I just think that the scales are being removed from our eyes and more people are realizing that domestic violence is more prevalent internationally and nationally. And as you can see on the screen, that the UN Secretary basically, you know, he's calling on all governments to put women's safety first as they respond to this pandemic. Looking at France, they have a 30% increase in domestic violence reports. Spain has 18%, Singapore has 30%. But also looking at here in the US, they say it's 35%. However, we know that 50% of domestic violence cases go unreported. And also here in the city of LA, the mayor announced a program this month to put domestic violence victims in hotels doing sheltering in place. A lot of shelter organizations or DV organizations, they have limited funds. Also, due to the pandemic, they can't even really welcome new victims into the shelter because of COVID-19, but also they can't even, you know, send out the ones that's there, just thinking of the safety and also how to address COVID-19. And so we have to take a look at, this has been addressed internationally and nationally, but also we want to take a look at how there's extended dangers for women during COVID-19. So what makes this season difficult, risks are for the loss of income for families. So if some women are victims of domestic violence and they want to leave due to the job destruction that took place of really no fault of most people and the economic stress that we have and the upsurge of inequities economically, it's a loss of income. And so a lot of victims are staying where they are, not just for themselves, but for their children. They're becoming more financially dependent. Even before the pandemic, some women did not have the income to move out on their own, or there was not enough affordable housing for them to even seek places to live on their own. And so that leads into becoming homeless due to domestic violence. Overwhelmingly, most of the homeless women are homeless due to the fact of fleeing domestic violence situations. They're running away for their safety and also for their children. Here in LA, you know, we now are advocating for eviction moratorium. I'm part of this affordable housing group, GPOD, Greater Pasadena Affordable Housing Group, is faith-led, asking for, you know, city government to pass eviction moratorium so more people won't be homeless, but also looking at better ways for women. And that's my stance, being a part of that group. My stance is always for women and children, for women to be able to have a place to live, and also for their children to have a safe and consistent place to live as well. So when we think about homelessness, hopefully we don't think of the stigma that people think that some people didn't pull themselves up by their bootstraps, or, you know, there's just some stigmas out there. So let's think about a lot of women that are out there. They're out there because they're trying to get away from domestic violence situation. This is not a personal view of mine. This is a data-driven response, and this is a data-driven, my statement comes from data-driven information. And there's also this form of isolation. We know that for some abusers, that was one of the ways to
So Adrian's been having some technology issues. I think she might be having it right now. Yep, I think we just lost her. But she's back. That's how technology works.
Sorry. So can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Adrian, we can hear you.
I'm gonna call.
You're gonna call in? All right, so isolation is really a serious thing.
Can you hear me, Candy?
Yes, we can hear you now. Can you hear me? All right, well, we wait on Adrian. Isolation is a serious thing because it not only affects victims of domestic violence, but also seniors, and then seniors who are victims of domestic violence. This isolation, again, that goes into the form of control. Because if I can get you away from anyone else, they will not be able to give you any feedback on what I'm doing. And that's really just a way that people keep people under control. Adrian, are you with us? All right, so we'll go ahead and move on. When you're also looking at isolation, we're also talking about a lack of support, because first off, we see, I'm gonna need everyone to please mute themselves. Thank you. So there's a lack of support, and especially in communities of color, we look towards the church as being our family. But when you have an abuser, especially if that abuser is trying to isolate you, then they don't want you going to church. They don't want you going around your family. And what they will do is sometimes they won't even say that they don't want you there. They'll just make it so unbearable that you don't even want to go around, and the family doesn't even want you around, and the church doesn't want you around. They will go and cuss you out in church. They will go and cuss you out in front of your family and friends, or they'll come in and act any old kind of way. And your family and your friends will get tired and tell you, don't bring that mess around my house. And so that is what your abuser is looking for. They're looking for someone to say, you know what, don't come around. We all know, okay, maybe we don't know, but there are limited culturally specific services for Black women. There are really a lack of culturally specific services across the board. When you're looking at most domestic violence and sexual assault organizations, they do not look like most of the speakers on the screen. And all across the board, there are women of color all over the world, and they do not have the resources for someone that not only looks like them, but understands their needs. Because we all come with a whole set of individual, personalized needs. And as much as I love all women and most people, not all people, but most people, I don't want to go to somebody who really is trying to figure out why my hair looks like this and why I can't use certain kinds of lotions and creams on my skin. Why you just can't use it. It's lotion. It doesn't work for me. And so we're going to move on, and we're going to bring in our next guest. Our next guest, Miss Alejandra, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. So you want to go ahead and talk about these next couple of screens?
Of course. So first of all, I just want to talk about how it's not safe for victims to be at home right now, even with this whole rule of this stay at home and be safe. So right now, it's because of the whole COVID-19 situation, we see that more victims are staying at home with their perpetrators. And this even like with the whole, like just like I think everyone were experiencing this mental health issues, such as whether it can be anxiety, depression, stress, with the uncertainty and not knowing what can happen. So obviously this puts the perpetrator in a position where they feel like they're less in control, and which can cause the abuse to escalate. And usually we see this when the victims are trying to leave the relationship, which makes it more dangerous for the victims, as we know. So the perpetrator feels less in control after that person they've had so much control over, they leaves, and during this time they're seeing this while both the abuser and victim are in the same home, which can be even more dangerous. And what we're seeing is that there's an inability for the victims to reach out for the help, and right now what's causing all these risk factors is that close proximity to the perpetrator. This pandemic makes it tough on the victims to reach out because the usual relief bulbs are not available. For instance, both either the victim or the abuser are not working, and so they don't have the ability to call or leave, or they don't have the safe space to make sure that that allows them to reach out to either the police or call the shelters or any hotline. So there's another, and that's for the, and what's causing is that they're both trapped they're in the same home. And there's another obstacle right now that we're seeing is that that we were talking about is that sometimes even the victims right now with this whole COVID-19 situation might be afraid to reach out to a shelter in fear that they might be exposed to the virus, or even the shelters alone might not be able to take them in since they're not accepting people. And this can also call for the whole situation where there's both the perpetrator and the victims are at home, can call for more control over the family routine or the household, since the perpetrator is there all the time and can lead to further isolation by controlling them when the victim leaves the house or they can talk to. Also, due to the close proximity to the abuser, there's an increase of verbal abuse, such as name calling, criticizing, or cursing, and just the chaos of being around the abuser all the time is what's causing the situation where victims are not safer at home.
Wow, thank you so much. We're getting comments all over the place, not only here in this chat, but also on Facebook. Just want to take a moment and say that people are also talking about those who may be disabled and have a domestic violence case, because we know abusers often will target people that they feel that they can have power and control over, especially if you have some disabilities. So does anybody want to talk about that just for a quick moment? Kelly, I see you.
Yeah, and anyone else can join in as well. I just want to kind of open up and broaden the understanding too of abusers from the perspective of the population and the participants in which I've served over the last 6-7 years. Most of the abusers that I have engaged with weren't the typical abusers that sought out like predatory type behaviors to seek out a weaker victim. So even though we know that those abusers do exist, but that wasn't the typical abusers, especially within the communities in which we serve, that wasn't the typical thing. And I know that as I move forward and we go further in the presentation, we can kind of talk about why. But most of those abusers were, as you've always coined the phrase, hurt people, were victims themselves. And as I believe it was Andrea at the beginning of the presentation who talked about how this is a learned behavior. And you yourself showed up and said that violence and abuse starts in the womb. So that means that most abusers are groomed in that style of communication and that style of love. And it is normal for them to do certain things or to exercise that power and control. I'm going to go further when I get ready to speak and talk about the layers that actually exist that sets that up for that, not just within the home. But so I just want to say that too, is that yes, they do, and that is the predatory, the abusers or the sexual abusers that have that type of predatory mentality, just like, you know, looking out and seeking out the dynamics. But here's the thing, most of the ones, the predators that I spoke to, the offenders of domestic and sexual abuse, they said that they love the challenge. And that they actually sought out women and men who were who thought that they were all that, or who were the CEOs of corporations, or who was the executive directors of nonprofits, and it was their intention. So the predators, it was their intention to break them down. to subdue them and bring them under to their power and control will. That was the ultimate trophy and prize for them. So those who, most of the ones, I'm not saying that that is the situation. So don't just look for that behavior. Because like you say, when we talk about domestic violence, we talk about childhood, we talk about personal experiences. And so therefore, it's layers to it. But I just want to say that there's different types of abusers, even though we're looking for abuser behaviors, but that, you know what I'm saying? So I just don't want our community and some people who are maybe hearing from the first time to be looking for one particular kind.
Thank you, Kelly. And so as you see, you know what, the thing about these conversations, the information is so rich. Our special guests are so knowledgeable, the time flies. So we're way into this presentation. I did put this up, what dangers do you? Those that are watching on Facebook and our guest here today, I was going to ask you to put this here, but I want to go ahead and move forward so we can make sure we get everything. But what I would like you to do in the comments section, if you could put in what kind of dangers you see, or what kinds of things are you seeing from either your work or your home. You do not have to personalize it, but we really want to make sure that we get a full picture so that we could address those things. So yeah, I just want to know if you're seeing anything different, if you're hearing anything different, or what's going on in your community. So we're going to skip that. And we really want to talk just really quick, really briefly about Black females and intimate partner violence. And they experience violence at 35%. That's 35% higher than white females. And what makes this interesting is that we're only 6% of the population. So we're experiencing it at rates that are far greater than anything else. And Kelly mentioned just a moment ago how some people go and find, she said, women and men. And I don't think I acknowledged this at the beginning, but both women and men, and people, all genders, all sexualities, all ages, as well as socioeconomic backgrounds, are victims of domestic violence. And they're also abusers. Okay, and Black men experience intimate partner violence at a rate of 62% higher than white males, and about 22 times greater than other races. About 40% of Black women report a coercive contact by the age of 18. And according to my records, and this is from doing this work since 2010 and interviewing well over 15,000 people, that I'm finding the vast majority of people who have been sexually assaulted or abused happen as children, young children, prior to the age of 8 years old. So one of the reasons we really have no idea to the magnitude of this problem is because parents don't want their children to be interviewed for several reasons, for the fact that they don't want them traumatized or re-triggered, and then also because we know that violence and abuse begins in the home and they don't want people to know what's going on. So I just needed to lay that there. We're gonna have more conversation about it, and we're gonna have more presentations such as this. The #1 killer of African-American women, age 15 to 34, is homicide at the hands of our current or former intimate partner. We already know that when you're in an abusive relationship, the violence happens and you have no idea when it can happen. But also we know that when that person says that they're gonna go, that's when the violence increases and it becomes very deadly. I'm gonna skip that. Adrienne, are you back with us?
I'm back.
Oh, Bernita. Yes, wait, before we go, Bernita, you want me to back it up?
No,
Yeah.
Somebody said yes, back it up. Somebody wanted to see that?
This is Adrienne. So Bernita, you could go and then I'll go after you.
No, I was just gonna make a comment, and my gray hair has taken over for the moment. So it went right on past because I didn't get in fast enough. I had to start writing things down. So that's okay, it'll come back up.
And when it does, just let us know.
I will, I'm gonna write it down.
Okay, all right, Miss Adrienne.
So one of the things we want to talk about is we're talking about domestic violence, and I missed my slide, and I'll try to make it up at the end. But according to the Center of Disease and Control, Black women experience intimate partner violence related homicides higher than any other racial group in the United States. Besides, Native Americans are right behind us. And this is a report that was published in August of 2017. So overall, most women are murdered 2 per every 100,000, but for African American women, it is 4.4 per 100,000 for Black women. And approximately 22% of Black women have been raped at some point in their lives. And so this is something else. I'm really happy, Candy, that you decided to have this Zoom conversation, because these are conversations that need to be had in addition to us figuring out some solutions and to be action oriented to help these numbers to decrease, but also to address and to be a support to our sisters in our community.
Awesome.
Next slide.
Okay.
I saw a question or comment, Candy, about transgender women, transgender individuals. And yes, that rate is high. The murder rate is very high. And people don't understand the LGBTQ community, nor do they have a good understanding about men who are victimized. And going back to what Kelly said earlier and what's been said a couple of times, they are abused individuals also, and that's all they know. That's all they saw when they were coming up. So we are what we see.
Right, thank you. So Adrian, I know you want to give your truth. Can I get you to give your truth in about 5 minutes? No, I mean, as in give all the information. Are you there, Adrian? All right, well, we're going to come back to Adrian. She was going to share with us her truth. Kelly, why don't you go ahead and take it?
I'm sorry, I'm having to go through the slides. I apologize. Hello, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much that you guys have stayed with us thus far, and you guys are super, super engaged in this conversation. I'm looking at the chats go up, I'm looking at the Facebook go up. Then I have my staff that's chatting with me while we're chatting with each other. So I just appreciate the fact that for some that may not have been a victim of domestic violence, that you guys are concerned and aware to maybe help each other, help someone else, or to do prevention work or whatever, or to do intervention work. But I'm also grateful that you guys are just tuning in with the Positive Results Center and all of our beautiful community partners. So let me move forward. So like as I said before, and I kind of spoke about some of the cycle in the dynamics of domestic violence. So I'm talking about the community violence and DV and how those things sometimes go hand in hand. And because of it, we can become locked in a cycle and culture of violence, right? So before we go in and how DV is also affecting us during this COVID-19 type situation, and also how it's affecting our teens and how it's affecting our youth and young adults, because that's the area in which I work with. So although I am a program director for Positive Results Corporation, I also do gang intervention work in the city of Los Angeles. And because I do that work in the city of Los Angeles, I am engaging in so many young individuals from the age of 12 to 25 who are either facing domestic violence and violence within the home, as well as when they're running away, and also getting into teen dating violence situations. So I don't know if Kitty is sharing yes, she is, because I can see it on the screen finally, because my system is kind of messing up too. So, like you say, it's technologies. And someone said narcissists are abusers too. Yes, they are. So let's talk about this. So it says locked in a cycle in a culture of violence. So as you can see on the screen, you have family violence that starts in the home. And what we have come to learn with the adolescents in which we have been engaging with is that as those kids or those children begin to grow up in that violent home, and where they're learning power and control tactics, where they're learning these survivor type tactics, they also begin to either perpetrate that or exhibit those behaviors, not only at school, but then also with their friends when they go into the community. And so a lot of people that we deal with are actually in the middle. They're caught up in the middle in the cycle of community violence as well as domestic violence. And then here's the reason why I got this third picture up here where you see that the paramedics, the law enforcement, and the community members are watching. Because what happens too, as we talk about how teens and young adults, as well as adults, and the reason why they don't seek help, or the reason why they're not calling out for that security or that help during COVID-19, or why they're in these DV situations, is because of the violence that they have faced when it comes to the people who's supposed to be protecting them. So, you know, you have law enforcement who has abused our trust or who has mistreated us in some way, form, or fashion. Not all LAPD officers or not all law enforcement, but they are these bad apples and these bad situations that happen in our community that also keeps us from being able to reach out to for help during this time. And not only that, when the police show up, or when law enforcement or fire department or the medical EMT officers show up, sometimes even DCF workers. So if we got any social workers or DCFS workers on the line, I don't mean to, you know, label you or give you a bad name, but if you're coming from a culture or a community of violence like this, you're known as the baby snatchers, right? Because not only will we call out for help, then when we do get the help, then we're threatened with the fact that we're going to have our children or our loved ones taken from us, or our families become separated if the violence does not stop. So what happens is so we look like we're being forced into a situation by the government. We're at home being threatened. So we're threatened by the government. We're threatened by street violence. And then we come in the house and threatened by our loved ones or the people that's supposed to be loving us. And so with that being said is that a lot of children get caught up in that cycle. And like you say, they have nowhere to go. So, and so the question becomes, so whether if you're an adult, whether if you're a child, or whether if you are a teen, the question becomes the house or the streets, right? Not saying that there's not other resources that's out there, but when I think about a shelter, especially coming from a place or coming from, you know, in the urban community, whatever, when I think about a shelter, to me, that's Skid Row, right? To me, that's the streets. So I have to choose because of the fact that I have nowhere to go. So if you see the teens that are in the middle, right, they are caught up in the web between either having to be in the home where the abuse is going on, or they have to choose the streets. So what I am dealing with is I'm dealing with a lot of teens who have ran away because school was their outlet. The community resource center was their outlet. The park playing basketball was their outlet, to allow them to be able to mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually deal with some of the stresses and the violence and the threats and even the sexual abuse at home. So now they have to choose, not only just teens, but adults as well have to choose between, do I face the streets to get away from this abuse, or do I stay in it? And then, so as I spoke to some of my friends, so I'm going to do a couple of these bullet points, and I'm going to also talk to you about what some of my colleagues that work in the shelters, and as well as over the Domestic Violence Council, what they had to say.
And Kelly, we've got 20 minutes on our presentation.
Yeah. Yes, I know that. So thank you, baby. Thank you, Miss. Okay, so often adults may not know what resources are available to them when they flee domestic violence with the teens or adolescents, and the services they do try to access may not be available for them. So what you may not know is that if I have a son that's around 12, 15, 16 years old, and I'm feeling a domestic violence situation, or I'm trying to get away, then what happens is that my son, my teen son or my adolescent son may not be able to access the same resources with me as my two younger children. And if anyone else says that, or they know something different than that, please let me know, because from what I'm hearing, that's still some of the rules of some of the age brackets that children can be in order for mothers who are fleeing domestic violence or who have been enduring domestic violence for decades have to deal with. Also, the families will have to split up for safety and economic concerns and issues, right? Because maybe in the midst of them trying to shelter themselves during this time, they might not be able to care for the children. And sometimes some of our teens are pushed out of the home as a way that the mother is actually, or the father is actually trying to protect the child from domestic violence. So they push them out of the home, or sexual violence, to prevent them from having to deal with that. And so I have actually assisted about 10 runaways during COVID-19 because the fact that they have been experiencing, I'm kind of getting touched right here, but they have been experiencing domestic violence, or they've been emotionally and abused, or being left to feel that they are a burden now, since their parents have to feed them, and so they're actually choosing the streets. So the choice becomes, do I choose homelessness over street life, over the pain, the abuse, and the fear inside of the home for me and my family? So this is my last slide, Candy, and I'm gonna hand it back to you. We'll have about 15 minutes to wrap it up. But it says that domestic abuse influences community violence. Family crisis is one of the main reasons that teens choose the streets over their homes. Many young people, especially girls, begin engaging in survival sex within the first 48 hours of actually leaving their home for food and a place to stay and escape and BB. And this is where positive results we find the teens and the adolescents and the youth we deal with, because we've actually had to create and give our own care packages away, because I have about 3 young girls who actually ran away, and then a couple of them was raped, and a few of them was pressured for sex. And then I had to also seek family planning centers as a result of it, just within this last 2 months of being quarantined, because of the family dynamics. And it says most boys join gangs as an extension of the family and may provide companionships and protection lacking in the adolescent's home environment. So like, as I hand it back to Candy, as we say, is that there's these layers of domestic violence due to these situations in which the child actually chooses a worser evil than the one that they're going through. But it's something in the dynamics, and maybe one of you psychology majors can speak up here as to the reason why a child would choose to take their chances during this time of actually being exposed to COVID-19, being possibly raped and prostituted, or being solicited to a gang, as opposed to, because the abuse or the torture and the pain and the emotional burden is so heavy that they would rather choose these things than to stay at home or to continue to endure what they've gone through.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I just want to say one thing before we move on. And this choice, kids think they have a choice, but they don't have a choice. They're making the best choice of the situation. And I talk to, and we counsel here, so many young ladies and young men who have been sexually assaulted and raped. And one young lady told me, Miss Candy, I was either going to get raped by 5 boys, or I was just going to let them have sex with me. So I let them have sex with me. And I had to explain to her, no, honey, you were still raped, because that's rape, any way you look at it. If you did not willingly walk into that situation and say, today I'm going to have sex with somebody, or whoever that person was, but if you have to decide, am I going to get gang rape, or am I just going to go ahead and let this happen? That's called rape all day long. So because we are really running out of time, I just want to touch on this very gently. Everyone is going to get these slides. We are going to continue to have these conversations because, as you see, there's a lot of things that we need to cover. So here is the cycle of violence. And some people start off with the tension stage. I always start off with the honeymoon stage, because when you meet someone, you like that person, you feel good, they make you feel good, you make them feel good, and then you start walking on those eggshells. You know, you have that fear, you kind of notice, wait a minute, this person is getting angry and upset for no reason. I don't know why, but I'm gonna just be cool for a minute. And then the violence pops off. And sometimes the violence doesn't actually happen to you. I was talking to one person who said they didn't know they were in an abusive relationship because the abuser was not mean to them. But the abuser was kicking the dog. The abuser was cussing out the servers at the restaurant. The abuser was cussing his mama out. And the abuser was cussing her mother out. You're in an abusive relationship. And then we go back into the honeymoon stage. And the honeymoons, and I don't really mean to rush over this because this is important and we can cover this more. But sometimes you will have people that you will have victims who will push their abuser to hurry up and get past this violent stage to get to the honeymoon stage. I could have Miss Bernita Walker talk about this all day long. Let me just kind of do a side note. She keeps talking about this 40-hour class. And when I first started doing this work, I had to show up in Miss Bernita's class, what, twice? At least. I'm coming back again. If you guys don't know Project Peacemakers, that's just a little side story.
I just kick something in right quick on the cycle of violence, the honeymoon stage. That's really a hooking in stage. That's a hooking in, because that's when the individual, the abuser, figures out what they need to do to get the victim, okay? So they're doing everything that they can to appease the victim in whatever way they can. That's my husband talking to the dog. So behind me. But we fail to see that hooking in, and that's the big part. That's when you get caught off guard. That's why I was asking the young lady about how long she had been with the gentleman, all of that, because all of those nice things come about meeting the family, everything. So thank you for letting me just share that.
Absolutely. And then we also, I know me, but a lot of people, when we're in that honeymoon stage, we will share everything. And what the abuser is looking for is, tell me what is it that you need so that I could do it, so that I could get you in my snare. So if I tell you, baby, you know what, I really love to have flowers and I really want a hug when I walk in the door, you better believe that's what that abuser is going to do. And to everybody, including you, it looks good, but it's anything but. So welcome back, Adrian. We're talking about the signs that you're in an abusive relationship. And I'm gonna just leave this here for just a second so that you all can see it. Again, you will all get these, this slide. You will get a copy of this presentation, so you'll actually be able to hear everything. But because we are really running out of time, I'm gonna move on. And Alejandra, I think this is you.
Yes, so go ahead and take over.
Okay, thank you. And we've got you got about 5 minutes.
Okay, so I just wanted to go ahead and just touch on how some of the risks, the typical barriers that victims face when trying to leave a relationship. And there's times when people who haven't experienced a domestic violence that we question the victims as to, like, we ask them, how come you don't leave? Or like, what are you waiting for? But something that we need to keep in mind is that, you know, the victims are faced with very, very difficult decisions that they need to make that might impact their decision as to why they haven't left. And for one example, of course, is probably one of the most important is that they might fear that they lose the custody of their children. As you know, sometimes the perpetrators might have more control over the financial situation, or might have like sometimes even they might be lawyers, or have jobs or put them in positions of power. So they obviously, the victims, they feel like they don't have as much control over their saying of who stays with the children or where they go. And then also there is also the whole financial part. Sometimes victims don't have a job, and if they do, usually the perpetrator tends to take the money away and either spend it or use it for whatever whatever it is that he needs, or even just wants. Or so that just puts the victim in a vulnerable position as to why they don't leave. I know we're short on time, so I just want to hopefully you guys had some time to just look over some of the barriers as to why the victims might not leave.
And I added this slide because this is actually directly from some victims and survivors. You all will have an opportunity to read this, but there are different reasons why people stay. And what I want to just add in right here, I'm going to ask everyone who is ever working with a survivor, knows a survivor, if you're a survivor, please don't judge them. You have no idea. I hear people say all the time, oh, if it was me, I would. No, you wouldn't. You don't know what you would do in that situation. Wait, did I skip 2 slides? No. All righty, so safety planning solutions. Alejandra, was this you or was this Abigail?
That was me, Alejandra.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I mentioned at the beginning of the PowerPoint, the presentation, I am a case manager, so I just want to share a little bit from my point of view where it comes to the whole safety planning with the victims. And some things to remember when doing this is that we need to start by knowing that the victim, or the client itself, is the expert of their life. So we need to make sure that when we're doing the safety planning, that we do it around their lives. And sometimes like when it comes to like something that where you have to escape, like they're the ones that know how their homes are arranged, or even like the fact that where would you go after you leave the relationship, like they're the ones that know who they can rely on. So we need to know that these plans need to be specific, that they're unique to their situation and to the survivor. So also as an advocate, we need to teach the survivors on how to plan, since the reality might look a little bit different than what we initially planned. So that way we need to teach them the tools they need to do the safety planning, and just so they know how to adapt as needed. And also we need to remember that when we're doing the safety planning, to use a trauma-informed lens, since when they're in crisis mode, or then the emergency happens, the portion in our brain that's the whole thinking, it tends to shut down. So because we enter the whole flight or fight, or we either freeze. And so in order for us to be able to protect ourselves in the moment, which is why it's important to go over the safety plan and just discuss it with the survivor, and also, like I had mentioned, to teach them how to do the safety planning so they can go ahead and adjust as needed. And especially another thing is that at this moment, I think the victims they need to be hyper vigilant, since how I had mentioned previously, there's the victims and the perpetrator are both under the same home, and there's less opportunities for the victim to leave the home right now. And one of the last things that I want to mention right now that's specific to the situation that we're living with the whole COVID-19 is that for those of us who are working remotely, and when we speak to our clients or the survivors, we need to see if the survivor allows us to take down the phone number, their location, in case something that there's a situation where the perpetrator comes in and there's an emergency where we need to contact the police department, or just so that way we can provide the information to the police officer and then send the help they need.
Thank you so much. So we're actually about to wrap this call up, but I do have 2 guests on the line. I don't know if they're still with us. Detective Sardana yeah, and oh my gosh, Garciana. I know I am killing these names, so my apologies to you. If you are still on the line, can you just join us really quick and just give us a quick brief minute or two about what happens when people call LAPD, or how do they reach you, especially in this time? Are you still with us?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you so much.
Hi. Thank you so much for letting us be part of the conversation. And I know we only have a few minutes, but we just want to thank you and thank all the people who are still here. But I guess one of the first things that we really do want to share is that despite these difficult times and what we're going through in the city, that there are still resources available, and we are still wanting to help people. So one of the things that we get asked often is, you know, if we are sheltering in place and we are having issues inside the home and there is violence inside the home, how can we best ask for help? Well, a lot of people don't know, but you do have the option to text 911. And if you do text 911, you can ask for help there. We, of course, would prefer you to call, just because it's easier for the dispatchers to field that phone call. But if you do have to text, it is available. One of the things that they say is that if you do text, unfortunately right now, they can only accept it in English. And another thing about texting 911 is that text what you need. Try to be as brief and as succinct as possible. So for example, if there's a fire in the house, you say that you need firefighters. If you have a violent situation occurring, ask for police. Or if there's a medical emergency, ask for paramedic. And also, list your location. Put your address in there. If you don't know the address, then at least maybe the closest cross streets. So good to know that, you know, even if you are in a place that you can't talk, then at least you'll be able to text that. So that's something that not a lot of people know, and we really wanted to share that before we left today.
Thank you so much. I apologize for cutting you off. It looks like, I'm not sure who just spoke, but the other one wants to speak real quick.
Just really quick.
Sorry, I know we're running out of time. It's Marie Sabnaga. I just wanted to add, because I know, hi Bernita, some people are probably wondering about calls for service, at least for LAPD. Our calls have gone up, the domestic violence related calls. We've gone up to about 127 calls a day since the stay-at-home order went into place, so that's like a 15.5% increase. And we believe still not everyone is calling, so we're encouraging more people to call. We'll send some information that you can email out, because I know people were talking about Project Safe Haven with the hotels. There is a flyer that has 24-hour hotlines for people to call. There is still plenty of space. They will take families and single individuals. So hopefully, if we can get the word out that that is a resource, we can have people calling to make sure they can go to a safe place.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, we're running out of time. This has been such a rich conversation. So many people have given so much information. And we're putting the slides on the screen now of the different resources. And so what I'd want to do in this last minute, and I apologize for going over, but I would like each one of our guests to just take one half a minute, about 30 seconds, and share any one thing that you want. Each one of their contacts is on here. So Ms. Bernita, your slide is up. Why don't you give me one thing?
I just wanted to say that the most important thing, or most important way for us to end this problem with domestic violence, is to empower victims, to make them feel like they are in charge of their lives. I just want to say that, okay? Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it. I hope that I've given you information that has been very positive for you. My number, you can call me if you need anything else as far as we're doing, and we're still serving clients every day.
Thank you very much. And Miss Adrian.
Hi, can you hear me saying, Candy?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to say that for the African American community, we really need to support our sisters and do not victim blame, do not ostracize our sisters who are being abused, who even take the chance to even to disclose. And most importantly, we need to support organizations and programs that are helping Black women to be in leadership positions and leadership roles in the domestic violence and sexual assault field, to make sure that these service deliveries have the voices and the cultural lens of people that are from our community, that know our community and know that we're not monolithic and will not tokenize us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Alejandra.
Yeah, so I just want to let the community know that we're still open, offering our services, especially the mental health portion of it. We continue to work with our therapists to offer the clients, survivors and victims, whether it's individual therapy or group counseling, and just let them know that we're still open and that information is on there for anyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kelly, last but not least.
Yes, everyone. So you can find me at the Positive Results Center. I think Candy has left the number to the office as well as her email where you can contact her. And if you want to talk to me specifically, then just let her know.
So I appreciate you all for being on this line. This has been such an enriching conversation. You will all receive copies of this. There's one thing before I go. One person had asked this one question, and I apologize. I have to ask. Is there, oh my goodness. Okay, where'd the question go? Of course, here. Okay, so how do you respond to instigation tactics like someone yelling and pointing a finger in your face? If anyone could address that really, really quickly, and I don't know if that's intimate partner or if that's work related.
The best way to, well, in my opinion,
yes, please,
is just not to say anything. Because if you say something, it's going to exacerbate the situation. But think about planning to get out. Okay? Just recognizing that they're angry at themselves and then it's not about you. I don't know if people understand that, but that's my suggestion.
I totally agree. So my name is Candy Lewis, and I am the CEO, Executive Director of Positive Results Corporation. I'd like to thank my wonderful guests from LAPD, from Project Peacemakers, from New Star Family Justice Center, from Teen Line, and from Positive Results. I thank my team. I thank each one of you for being on this line. We will share this information. And remember, next week, same time, we will have the same conversation, but with men. So I thank you so much for being on this call. You have everyone's contact, and if you didn't get it, just hold tight. You will get the slide, and feel free to contact us. Everyone have a blessed day. Feel free to include any comments that you want in the chat, and we will follow up with you. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you all.
I'm sorry to bother you. I don't know if you can help me.
Yes, ma'am.
Great presentation, Candy. I'm so glad I joined you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you joined us as well.
This is my first time actually participating in anything you've done. We've seen each other over there. I'm like, now that I work at home, see, I can do stuff like this.
Yes.
So we will be in touch. Yeah, we will be in touch because the subject is so real, and maybe we can figure out how we can do what